Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Demai. We are starting today Perek Vav Halacha Aleph. We're going to be learning Daf Nun Aleph. Right, we're on Daf Nun Aleph by the beginning of the new Perek. The Mishnah is going to teach us the tithing obligations, and we will see Truma sometimes Truma Sumaiseres. What are the tithing obligations of a makabel, and what are the tithing obligations of a choiche? So just to know, the word makabel / oris, in English it's called a sharecropper, that refers to a person who makes an agreement with a landowner. The makabel doesn't own the land, but he's going to be working on the land, and he's going to be giving a percent of what grows, l'mechza, l'shlish, l'viyah, to the owner. That's makabel. Choiche is the same concept, that there is a worker making a deal with a landowner. A choiche is called a tenant farmer in English. A makabel is called a sharecropper. Choiche means that he's going to be not paying him money. That's a soiche. He's going to be giving him a fixed amount of produce from what grows in the field, whether there's going to be more, whether there's going to be less. And as we will see in our sugya, that the more common, by far, the more common commitment agreements that landowners wanted was to have a deal with a choicher and not with a makabel. Because when you have a deal with a makabel, you really don't know how much you're getting. It has to do, you're vulnerable, like God wants us to be, whether it's going to rain, whether there's going to be winds, whether there's going to be a drought. And a choicher, the owner knows he's getting a fixed amount, and that will be a very big nekudah. Now, why are we talking about a makabel or a choicher? Because there is a rule that a person is not allowed to pay his debt with tevel. That's the basis of the beginning of this faith. So let's say that I'm a makabel. I have to give the owner a certain percent. If we view me giving the owner half as me paying a choiv that I have with him, then I would first be obligated to separate the Trumas U'Maisres prior to giving him his chaylik. And as we'll see in the Mishnah, that we do not look at it that way. I am not paying a debt with the owner. I'm leaving the owner what was always his, and I'm taking what's mine. And as we'll see, this is the way we view it, midoraisa. We're going to see if there are any additions midrabanan. We will see that in our Mishnah, the din of a makabel, by a makabel, the Mishnah will not differentiate whether the landowner is a Jew or a goy. Our Mishnah will make such a differentiation by a choicher. There'll be different rules whether the landowner is a yid versus lahapel if he's a goy. And the Gemara is going to bring a braisa that will make the same differentiation also by the makabel. That's going to be basically the skeleton, the base of the Mishnah and the beginning of the Gemara. We're going to also be learning here in Yerushalmi the din of shlichus, and as we know from the Babli, that one of the sources of shlichus is from the mitzvah of giving off trumas u'maisres. Pasuk and Parshas Koirach, Kein Torimu Gam Atem. The word Gam is extra. Gam l'Rabbi shluchachem, and from that same source, we also add Ma'atem b'nei bris, af shluchachem b'nei bris. So generally, we have a rule, as we'll learn today, that a goy is excluded from the din of shlichus. And the question that we will have, or the machloikes amoyroyim that we will have here in Yerushalmi, between Rabbi Yasa and Rabbi Zeira, Rabbi Yasa holds that what is excluded from Ma'atem b'nei bris, af shluchachem b'nei bris, is that a goy cannot appoint a goy to be a shliach. According to Rabbi Yasa, a goy is able to appoint a Jew to be a shliach. According to Rabbi Zeira, a goy cannot even appoint a Jew. Not a goy and not a Jew. That will be a very important machlokes hamiroim. That for sure not. Now we're going in the other direction. Okay, Rabbi Mendel is just speaking about that a Jew cannot appoint a goy, and parenthetically, that's din Torah. You know, Rashi holds, and the Alter Rebbe paskins by Rashi, that just as an example, by Amira La'akum, which is an Isur D'Rabbanan, you know, we have three reasons in the Rishonim, and the Alter Rebbe paskins in Halacha also bringing Shitas Rashi, that's midin shlichus. No, it's afapisha ain't shlichus la'akum, but yesh shlichus la'akum l'chumra when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos, and but that's beyond the biblical and correct. In that context, you never think about a goy appointing a Jew. That's about a yid asking a goy to do something for the yid's behalf. But we have to also know how this works in the other direction, and that will be the other direction is what's negate to our soul. Okay. So let's begin with the new Mishnah. It says the Mishnah Hamakabel Sodom mi Yisrael. Again, Hamakabel, I know many times is referred to an Aris. Look inside the Marafulda. I know it's the middle of the Amid, but it's in the beginning of the new Pedic. Hamakabel Sodom. For what percent, it doesn't matter. It's, that's the way every place had their own agreements. Either lemechza, either l'shlish, l'revia, kederecho arisin. Keep your finger in Nashi. Says the Mishnah, Hamakabel Sodom mi Yisrael. And the same will be min hanochli, and the same will be min hakuti. No matter, the rule will always be choylek lifnei hen, that the artist, the makabel, who's the one doing all the work, he is on the goyden. That is where they would make the chalukah. He divides the crop without being obligated prior to the division. He's not obligated to first separate the trumas from meiseres, which then would mean that the owner, let's say the owner is getting half, the owner is going to get half, all of it already mesukin. Doesn't work that way. He leaves the tevel produce half for the owner, and now the owner is chayiv to separate all of the trumas from meiseres. In other words, what we are saying is that we do not view the makabel to be paying a debt. We view the makabel simply to be transferring or leaving for the owner, for the landowner, his own property. Look inside the Marafulda. Yechalik lifneihem, mitamem, we have it in the nun. Ve'ein sarich la'aser chelik balasada. That's the chiddush. He doesn't have to first tithe from that half that he's leaving to the owner. Elamaniach lifneihem chelik schara karka kishe'einoi mu'usar. Now, Atkan, right, the sounds that straightforward. It should have been enough, but by the Marafulda, it's not enough. He has to add a reason. Now, we'll explain in a moment why Bechlal does he even have to add a reason. But let's read it inside. Says the Marafulda, why is it so? Mipnei Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. We don't want for land in the Holy Land to remain fallow. So we want to promote people wanting to work the land. If the worker of the land would have to first be toidim u'ma'aser, don't forget the owner is getting half. Now, it doesn't mean l'maynaf kimini, you can ask, right? What difference does it make? It won't go out of his pocket. Don't forget the mekabel also has to be toidim u'ma'aser from what he receives. Let's say trumas u'ma'aser is 22%. More or less. It's not that if the Ma'akabel is going to have to do the tithings, he's going to go out of pocket. Or will he? Think about it. He's giving mechza.
Doesn't matter. We say the first half the Kabul gets, the second half the owner gets.
What difference? No, it makes no difference which half.
Because you have to give from the beginning. You have to give the trumas matches, like from the give off.
No, you don't have to give from the beginning. You give bikurim from the beginning. Truma, you give 2%, and then you give another 10%, and then you give another 10%. So I just want to clarify that. Is this because if he's going to give trumas u'maiseres, he's going to go out of pocket, and we'll see in a moment. It could be.
You have 100%.
No. It won't make a difference. We're just denying work. We're giving him less work to do. Now, why would he have to do the work? Because he cannot pay with that. The Mishnah is saying that he's not paying. He's not paying a chayv. He's leaving the half that always belonged to the owner. So why does the Marafulda have to give a reason? Mepnei Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So we will see in a moment in the Mishnah that when it comes to a choicher, but from a goy, the choicher from a goy does have to separate something. Why? We'll see later. And that, whatever that reason is, one might have thought would apply by the makabel.
The choice from the goal has to separate something from his own produce, or
From that's from the goys. It's amazing. Now that's out of pocket by a choicher, because a choicher is giving a fixed amount to the landowner, and if he has to be separating prior to giving him the fixed amount, so from a goy, whatever that reason is, we'll see the reason. One might have thought that reason applies also by a makabel, just to make that clear. That's why the marafulda has to add b'pnei yishuv eretz Yisrael, just to make that clear.
Oh, is it just paying rent, basically?
We don't view it as him paying rent, because if we would view him as him paying rent, a person cannot pay with that. What we view is that he's leaving whatever belonged to the owner for the owner. He's paying himself. Let's sort of like he's paying himself from the work that he did.
It's like getting ownership in a company. You get 20% of ownership, 50% of ownership.
Mendel is saying that maybe this works as Breda type. In other words, he owns part. So everyone is just taking what they always own. No debts are being paid. That's the key. If we would view it as a payment of a debt, it would have to be Toidim Uma'asir. We don't view it that way. It's not a debt payment. That's the key. If it's not a debt payment, why do we even need Mapnei Yishuv Eretz Yisrael? Because we're going to see later in the Mishnah by a choicher that there are certain rabbinic concerns, and those theoretically could have applied over here, and therefore we're saying that it doesn't. Okay. Another key with the word lifneihem is also important over here. That why does he have to do it lifneihem? And the answer is, the Rambam writes, because we want for the landowner, when he's a Jew, to know that it wasn't tithe. And if he won't be machalik in front of the landowner, which would mean he would make the chalukah on the threshing floor, and then he would bring to the owner his half, the owner might think, a Yid gave it to me, it's already tithed. So it should be clear that it's not tithe. That's the lifnei. Now, in contrast, if the agreement is not of a sharecropper, but it's of a tenant farmer, choicher means that he's paying a fixed amount. Here, listen to this. Toidem, guys, toidem, dafke means truma. Toidem does not mean truma sumaisis. Toidem v'noisenloim, that the truma must be taken, and that now, look inside the Marafulda, right? The first widest line, Toidem v'noisenloim. First of all, Toidem is Toidem avoloi maset. The whole choicher almenas kein yored l'sada sheyitem loy chachi rosoi mi peidos hagedelim l'sada b'tivlon. Really, why not meiser? Why not meiser? Because that's the standard understanding that the landowner who knows he's getting a fixed amount is going to be getting it b'tivlon. So why does he have to give up truma? Umio mishum the ein lahashois hatruma. There's a din that when there's stuff on the threshing floor, you may not remove it off the threshing floor prior to taking off truma. That doesn't go on ma'aseh, it goes on truma. So it's a din that you're touching notes when you put things on the threshing floor, you're not being toidim anything. But the moment you want to remove it from it, you can't do it without taking off truma. Mishumacha only toidim v'noisim loy. But hold on a second. If, like the Marafulda said, that the agreement of the choicher, net or gross, was I'm getting gross, I'm not getting net. I'm getting a fixed amount. Everyone understood he's not getting it already fixed. And if you're telling me now, which you are, that he has to be toidim, does that mean that the tenant farmer is going to go out of pocket? No, he won't go out of pocket. He has to take off the truma, but he deducts it. Shiro truma, the maishna truma mi maiser. That's a very important line. Now, all of this, this is important, is from a Yid. not from a goy. We'll see in the din of a goy in a second. But you guys who got it? In other words, a choicher and a makabel in premise is the same. It's not called a debt payment. Not called a debt payment. By a makabel, he leaves it for him. That's the way it worked. The choicher would give it to him. So there's a side in. Since he's giving it to him, he's not cutting the threshing floor in half. And this is my side, that's your side. He's delivering to him 10 pounds. So there's a din that you cannot remove anything off the threshing floor prior to you taking off truma. But the 10 pounds that he owes him is before the truma was given. He's not losing. That means the owner will not get 10 pounds. He's going to get 10 pounds minus 2%. It's just the choicher is chayiv to do the act of the truma. Okay, now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, like we had in the previous Perek, is not arguing with the Tanakama. He's qualifying the Tanakama. That Mosai, when do we say that all he needs to do is only the Truma and not Meiser? That's only Bisman Shenosan Loi Ma'oisa Hasada Uma'oisa Hamin. That's only if the 10 pounds of produce is from that field and from the type of work that he agreed to do in the field. But if he's not giving him from the same field, which, by the way, the owner would accept. In other words, I have to give you 10 pounds of potatoes, and for whatever reason, I'm the tenant farmer. I own a field. I have another deal over there in another place. If I'll give it from there, or if it grew in this field, but it's not that which we agreed upon, but I planted other stuff, and now I'm going to give him a part from it, then not only does the choicher have to separate truma, but also ma'aser b'noisen loim. Look inside the marafulda. Emosai, right, 2 lines from the bottom, that Emosai is not qualifying when he has to take off truma. Emosai that he doesn't have to take off meiser is only if he did it from that field, from that min. But if he's paying him either from another field or not, which that they agreed upon, misada cheres, afilam oisamin, oi shalom oisamin, afilam misada shaloi. Just as an example, shazara mixas asada, afamin acher. Even though they, in other words, let's say I'm the tenant farmer, you're the owner. I'm telling you, I'm planting potatoes. Turned out that I planted half potatoes, half bananas. I planted carrots, and I'm giving you a fixed amount, but it wasn't what we agreed upon. Chayiv la'aser gamkein. Why? Because then the dummy leparei chayiv makes a lot of sense. In other words, let's go potatoes. If I'm giving you 10 pounds of potatoes, if it grew on this field, which is what the owner thought, then I'm not paying a debt. I'm leaving what's his. If I am bringing it in from another field, that's called paying a debt, which, by the way, could happen. It could be that it didn't grow here. It was very shlamazel dikir. And the whole advantage of a chachirus for the landowner is that he doesn't care whether it was matzliach, not matzliach. I'm getting my 10 pounds. But if I'm not taking it from here, then I'm paying a debt. If I made up on planting potatoes and I planted other things, and you're telling me, the owner's telling me, I wanted, telling him, okay, I used your field. I'm giving you from what else I did. That's already paying a debt. It wasn't what was in the initial agreement. I changed the agreement. Even though now I'm making good with the landowner, I'm making good. That's called paying a debt. And it's not viewed then that I'm leaving to the owner what was always his. Even if it grew in his field, if they didn't make up that he's planting that type. It's amazing. Okay. So Atkan, by the way, just to have it clear, until now, a choicher and a makabel are really the same. The only difference is that truma, since you're taking it off the threshing, he has to do the work of separating the truma without going out of pocket. But that, by the choicher, that's only if the owner is a yid. Now, let's turn to Dafnun Aleph Amid Beis. In contrast, in our Mishnah, this contrast is only made by a choicher. If the owner is a goy, now not only, it's amazing, yeah, the goy, not only does the choicher have to first separate truma, even though he's a goy, we'll get there in a moment, but even ma'aser v'noiseloi. And now let me add something. And the tenant farmer has to bear all of the cost. And the question is, why is that? And first of all, the guy is a goy.
So don't we say Yeshuv Eretz Yisrael? Don't we try to ease it on them?
So now we're going to get the balance of the two ways. Part of Yeshuv Eretz Yisrael is that we do not want for goyim to own land in Eretz Yisrael. Even according to Rabbi Meir, that ain't king in la'akom la'afkiya, which means that if a yid will buy produce later, he'll be chayv to be ma'aseret. But that's not always going to happen. Let's just start with that. First of all, we don't want them to have ownership. Second of all, the product, if the goy would grow it in his field, and the goy is going to go all the way up until the Meiruach, even according to Rav Meir, we learned last week, once the Meiruach happened, the Yad Goy, a Jew that buys it later won't have to be Toidim U'Ma'ased anything. Midoiraisa, which is not good for the Kohen or the Levi. So we want for Yidden to have ownership of land.
So it's getting penalized.
So what happens is Goyim bought land because it's a good business investment because they're going to find, again, we're going on the premise that landowners, we're not talking about a guy who has a little backyard. People who buy fields need to have people working for them, and the normal agreement that they were looking for would be to find someone that would work for them as a choichet. They were not looking for a makabel. So making the choichet go out of pocket is going to disincentivize, decentivize the choichet working for a goy. If a goy in Eretz Yisrael cannot find Jewish labor, look at the world change, then lechatchila he won't buy that land, or he's going to sell it to a yid. Why don't you make this gezeda by an others? Because it's less common. Since it was less common for goyim to rent it out to mekabelim, so the chachamim did not make the penalty on something that was then not shchiach. And now you understand. I'm going back to the Maraf Fulda. Together with that, see, there's the other balance. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. I'm going together with that. In other words, the advantage of making the worker, the yid, go out of pocket is that he won't want to work. The disadvantage of him not wanting to work is that the land will lay fallow. So our Mishnah holds by a makabel, since it's davar shelo shchiach, we don't want for the makabel to go out of pocket, even from a goy. I penalize him. No goy, the goy won't even find a makabel. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. But on the other hand, when it comes to the classic, like people buy apartment buildings, they buy them here not to live in there, to rent them out. You lechatchila won't buy it if you're not going to have people renting it out. You're not going to have people working on your land. So that was the Gezeidim of the Rabban. Now says the Mishnah. Now I'm going to give you a case where even a makabel, according to our Mishnah, even a makabel will have to be ma'aser, even though the Mishnah began that he doesn't have to. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer, listen to this case, guys. Af hamikabel stay avois of min hagoy. What we are talking about over here, that there was a Jew that in the previous generation, goyim stole the land from his parents, from his grandparents. This is the tragedy of the times of the Mishnah. We have also in Gittin various Mishnayos of what would happen. So just to tell you what would happen, it was the Romans came into Israel and they confiscated land. There was a certain connection that a family has with land that was owned by their ancestors. We want to motivate them to redeem it, even though you can say it's not fair, but there's no option. They were not going to give it up without your redemption. So he says that af hamakabel stay avois of ben hagoy. If a yid, the descendant, says, "Let me be the sharecropper," because he's connected to the land. We don't want him to get comfortable in only being a sharecropper. We want to motivate him to buy it back, to redeem it. How do you motivate him? By telling him you got to pay more. And this goes from his own pocket. Same idea. It's an amazing concept. It's almost not fair. It's like redeeming the hostages right now. It's not fair, but on the other hand, they have to be redeemed. It's like, what do you do? not work on the land. You have to be Toidem Uma'asir out of your own pocket. Now, what does it mean? That's my question. That you have to be Toidem Uma'asir over here means both Trumas and Maasros. What does it mean out of your pocket? He's a makabel. I'll tell you what it means. The goy knows that the crop was 10 pounds. That's what 10 pounds. He expects to get 5. It wasn't that lechatchila he knew he's getting 5. He knew how much grew. He's getting from that. He's counting on 5 pounds if he's getting half. If I'm the yid, I'm Toidem Uma'asir, then it's going to be 5 pounds minus 22%. He's going to say, you can't do that. I want my 5 pounds. So it's going to cost me a lot more. I won't be happy with that agreement. Why was I working for him as a makabel? Because my Zayda owned the land. I guess I at least have a chelik in the land. I'm going to feel that's not just. And what will I do with that feeling? I'm going to go redeem it from him. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Wow. Look inside the Marav folder. Stay avoisa. 4 lines from the top. So you can say, why should we blame the victim? But that's what we're doing. In other words, it was stolen from his forefathers. Who to the Aris? La'aser for him to be upset and for him to push himself. For him to buy it from that family. And why would he be motivated to buy it? Like he'll work with someone else. No, he wants to be in the land. Because that's the nature. If I know that my father owned that property, there's a certain chavivos I'll have to it. Is lo yaniach milakabel men amrach b'yoser. When it's going to be so difficult, so heavy for him to pay, so he'll be motivated to redeem it. Which is what the Chachamim wanted for Yidden to be the owners of the land. That's the bottom line in the Holy Land. Okay. Interesting. Says the Gemara. Okay, our Mishnah, bottom line, made a chilik by a choicher, from a Yid, only Truma, guys. From a Goy, then he, and by the way, Truma from a Yid, not out of his pocket. But when you're choicher from a Goy, Ma'aser means he has to separate Truma Umaisa out of his pocket. The tenant farmer bears all the cost. That chilik, our Mishnah did not make by a makabel. The Mishnah made was a makabel. Beit min Yisrael, min anochri, min akuti, all the same. The Mishnah says you do nothing. You just divide it, right? And lifneim. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, our Mishnah is only divrei Rabban Shuma ben Gamliel, which when Rabbi was soisem the Mishnah, obviously Rabbi Paskins like it. Aval divrei Chachamim. That added, or even by a makabel, by a Yisrael, like we learned in our Mishnah, choylek means that he divides whatever the agreement was and he leaves it on the threshing floor for the owner, for the Yid that's an owner, and he doesn't have to do anything. But min hagoy, the Chachamim also are machalek between a Yid and a goy. That if he's a makabel from a goy, toidem, guys, toidem is only truma, and then he gives the landowner his portion. Wow.
Why not everything else?
Let's look inside. The Rashirilio.
So is this opinion of the Chachamim the same as what we learned with in our Mishnah?
No.
That about a choicher? It seems like the same as
because by a choicher, by a goy, ma'aser v'noisnaloi.
Right.
You have to take off trumas u'maisres and bear the cost. Here, the Chachamim hold only toirem. You only take off truma.
Oh, got it.
Now, why do you have to take off truma? You have to take off truma because of another din. The kohen won't get the truma from the goy. Look inside the Rashidili. That's the way he learns. Me Yisrael choylek the left half cost meiset, because you're not taking away anything from the Kohen and from the Levi. But min hagoy koydem the ika hafka means that you're gonna somehow rob the Kohen. The Kohen is not going to be getting it when you give it to the Yid. Now, 1 second. The Gemara is going to explain a little bit more. So why don't you have to give meiser as well? Right?
That's what I asked. Yeah.
That's what you asked.
Or why is the chover being penalized so much more?
Okay. Meaning, me Yisrael choylik v'noisen lefanav, no problem. Uma'akum choydem v'noisen loy, the sfira lahu, because the chachamim, the whole, the konsu, the mekabel min ha'akum, kemoy the konsu b'choychet. They penalized him. Why did they penalize him? To discourage such leases. In other words, not that he did anything wrong. They don't want going to own land. The same thing they did to the choychet, they did to the makabel. But hold on. The question is, if they cancelled him, then then why not also meiser?
He brings on the bottom from the Rush Cirilio.
So the vart is that they used to share on the threshing floor. We learned before that you cannot remove anything off the threshing floor. We're putting this together prior to taking off the truma. The whole thing is only a knas, but they only obligated the truma. It's a lesser of a knas. And exactly that's what the Rashidili is trying to address over here. The kivim, the choylik lehem, chelkam begoiden, shaloi ra'ah pnei abayis. Therefore, b'maislus lemachayve, adding another nuance. When produce is going into the home, then really the chiyuv is when it is pnei abayis. But you have this rule that you cannot remove anything off the threshing floor prior to taking off truma. So the knas only went to the truma. But the rationale behind the knas, according to the Chachamim, is just like the rationale in our Mishnah about the choychet. What's that knas? It's not because the choychet did anything wrong. We don't want for a guy to own land. And how do you discourage that? By him knowing he'll buy land, no one will work for him. Because whoever is working is going to have to pay more. Why would I be a makabel from a guy? Let me be makabel from a yid. And I want to go back, and if I'm going to separate the Trumas or Meises, it's going to come out of my pocket. Because even though he's a goy, he wants to get half. Let's say Mechza. He knows how much is there. He knows Mechza is X amount of pounds. If I will have to be Toidim prior to giving it to it, then I'm going to be losing 2%. Why would I lose 2% if I can work for a Yid? Okay. Says the Gemara, the Tani came. I have another Braisa that clearly writes this machloikes, and here we have to go with the Girsa Hamekabel. Hamekabel Sodom in Agoy. Toidem v'noisim loy befedish. Right? Our Mishnah holds Hamekabel Sodom migoy mechalik lifneim. Here we're writing clear like the Chachamim. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Mo imirtza hagoy hazeh shaloi litem pedo. It doesn't make sense that if the goy himself doesn't want to separate truma, a need a shoyi. What? A guy is not obligated to separate tithings. So why would I have to separate off his portion? In other words, if the owner doesn't have to take off trumas, so then why would I have to? Let me say like this. The guy is not obligated. If the guy is not obligated, can I do it on his behalf? That's the word. Of course not. If someone is not obligated, how can I do it on his behalf? Why am I able to take off something for you? You know when I can do something for you without your consent? If halachically it's to your benefit. It's called Zachin la'adam shaloi b'fanav. Ein chayven la'adam ela b'fanav. The guy doesn't have to take off truma. Doesn't make sense, he's saying. You're telling me that the yid has to do it? Why? The owner doesn't want you to do it for him. Now, how is this different than a chaychen? Why don't we say this by a chaychen? I'll tell you why. Because by a chaychen, I am not doing it on behalf of the owner. I have to give to the landowner 10 pounds, a fixed amount. The Chachamim tells a knas on the yid, you have to give him 10 pounds after you separated Trumas Umaisis. Masha'enken over here, by a sharecropper, the portion that the owner keeps is taka always his. We view it more that way. So if I have to separate Truma, I'm separating Truma off his part. No. How can I, if he doesn't have to do it, then unless he consents. If he doesn't consent, I cannot do it. I cannot do it on his behalf. Givaldi. We're not doing it that way. We're creating a system where if a non-Jew will want to buy land, he'll be discouraged to do so because he'll know that it'll be very hard for him to find people working on his land. It's in that direction. And let him buy land in Turkey. Let him buy land in Syria. Huh? Midrabanan. Further away. Let him go to Iran. They just said Iran was planning a terror attack in Almaty, this Chafaf. All right, says the Gemara. That Rabbi Zeidon, here we go. And this is going to be in the name of Rabbi Yosi, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, B'Shem Rabbi Yanai. We're going to go off topic and we'll come right back. And we're quoting a pasuk in Parshas Koirach, where it says, Kein torimu gam atem trumas Hashem, from where Chazal learned that it would have sufficed for the Torah only to write the words atem. Kein torimu atem. The Torah adds the word gam. Gam means also is pasha to be marbe. We're including, what are we including? Shluchach. That's one of the sources that one is able to appoint a shliach to remove one's truma. Now, furthermore, says the Braisa, it's now that we have a juxtaposition between the owner separating truma and the shliach separating truma. Now let's go with Rabbi Yanai. This is all b'shem Rabbi Yanai. Ma'atem b'nei bris, af shluchachem b'nei bris. Very important. So if a goy separated it with the Jew's consent, this is Mendel what you were speaking about before. If a Jew asked a goy, please separate truma on my behalf from my tevel, just do it for me, his separation is ineffective and it's invalid because he cannot do it on behalf. A goy cannot be a shliach on behalf of a yid. Now we conclude. Atem oisim shliach in the other direction as well. You see, Mendel, both directions. But that a yid can appoint a shliach. Very good. Now, why is it even relevant to say Ein Hagoy is a shliach? I want to say two dinim, guys, just to appreciate what we're saying. Number one, the Shem Rabbi Yanai follows Rabbi Meir, does not follow Rabbi Shem. We are following the opinion that Ein Kinyan La'akum Be'eretz Yisrael Lahavkiya, which means that the produce by itself is produce that needs to be tithed. Elamai, the owner, the goy, is not chayiv to tithe. What happens if the goy nevertheless tithes it? If you hold that ein kinyan la'akum, if a goy owns land and he separates truma, is it truma? Yes, according to this opinion of ein kinyan la'akum. So since he's able to do it, you would think that he can appoint a Jew to do it on his behalf. So that's why we have to say that atem oisim shliach ve'ein hagoy is shliach. In other words, I want to make a point over here. If the goy, I know a goy is not chayiv. The question is he shayach to separate truma? If the ownership of a goy would exclude that produce even to be chayiv and trumas, so if the goy cannot do it, then for sure he cannot appoint a yid to do it, and there's no need for the limud. The reason why you have to have a limud that atem moisim shliach ve'eno goyis shliach is because we are following the opinion that even though the goy is not chayiv to separate trumas from ma'asos, it's not one of his mitzvahs, but if he would have done it himself, it would be effective. Based on whom? Only based on Avmeir. That ain't kiyin la'akum. So now that it could be effective, you would think, let him appoint a yid. Huh?
Amazing.
Okay. Atkan shitas Rabbi Yannai. Now,
Can you explain that for 1 second?
I mean,
Like, what's the actual mechanics of a guy separating trumas and maasros? Like, here's Johnny, and he owns all this produce. He's actually able to say, "Hey, this is truma," and it actually becomes truma.
100%. According to Rav Meir, according to Rav Shimon, not because according to Rav Shimon, that yesh kiyin la'akum be'eretz Yisrael lahafkiyad, the chefze is not trumable.
So okay, but how does Reb Meir look at the guy's relationship with his produce? If a guy is not ever
it.
to be,
He owns it.
He does own it.
He owns it, of course. According to Rav Shimon, he also owns it. But the point is, because according to Rav Meir, not only does he own the paytas, he owns the land. According to Rav Meir, he doesn't own the land, which means the land didn't get any diminution in its kedusha. So the produce is bona fide tevel.
Fine.
And therefore, if it's tevel, if he separates truma, if he separates the maasros, truma say truma. And now on this we say that even though he could do it himself, he can't appoint a shliach. Now Rabbi Yasser Savar Meimar that this exclusion is only that a goy cannot appoint another goy. Aval be Yisrael, yes, oise. So holds Rabbi Yasser. Amar Rabbi Zeira, I disagree with you. Uminam. No. This whole exclusion of a goy from shlichus comes from the pasuk gam atem. So let's go back to the verse. Atem oisim shliach. When the atem oisim shliach, who can you make into a shliach? Is it not making a yid? A yid can make a yid a shliach. So when we exclude a goy, udekavase in a goy ois shliach, same. You are excluding the same scenario. A yid can make a yid a shliach, a goy cannot make a yid a shliach. Gewaldig.
Rabbi, can a goy ever be a shaliach for a yid?
Can a goy be a shliach for a yid? No.
Never.
Not midoiraisa. Midrabanan, we said in the intro that by Amir la'akum, we hold that yesh shlichus la'akum l'chumra.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So now I just want to finish the sugya. Why did we bring it over here? This machloek between Rabbi Yasser and Rabbi Zeira, whether a goy can appoint a Jew as shliach. So Hasid Rabbi Shayam that Hamas Nisan Messiah li Rabbi Yasser, not Rabbi Yechanan. That what the brayso that we just quoted is mashma like Rabbi Yasser that a goy could appoint a yid. Why? Because Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, ma'im yirtza goy azeh shelo yitrein. What did we learn? We learned that ain't a toidem, correct? You know, he should not be able to do it without his consent. Now, what happens if he gives his consent? And his argument was, since the guy doesn't have to do it, how can a yid do it for it? We said, but ain't chavan adam ela b'fanav. But does that not imply that if he would give the consent, then the yid would be able to do it? That's a raya that if a goy explicitly appoints a Jew as a shliach to take off trumas, it will be successful. So that l'chayr is like hash against Rab Zeira. That nun base. So the Gemara says, "Amar Rabbi, but it's not a raya because Rab Zeira understands that there is an inference. The inference is not that the goy can appoint a yid a shliach. The inference is that the goy can do it himself. And what does that mean? B'mamin al yadav. Whenever the goy is involved with the separation with the yid, even according to Rabbi Zeira, look inside the Pnei Moshe Amar Abba the loyhu the hachalab shlichas askinim. Ela b'mamin ha'akim u'maskim al yadav shel Yisrael. In other words, he's doing it together with him. Or if the akum wanted, then the goy
Like physically,
then he can separate it with the yid. But the guy doesn't want to do it. And if the guy doesn't want to do it, how can a Jew do it on his behalf? Okay. But wrapping up, I just want to wrap up the thing over here that even though in the Mishnah, by a Makabel says that the Makabel never does anything, In the Braisa, we have Shitas Chachamim that holds that from a goy nothing, from a yid nothing, but if you're makabel from a goy, there is part knas. That's the difficulty, and that is that the yid has to be toilim, and then give it to the goy, to be continued.